The surveillance state. Documented concerns about privacy and power introduction. This isn't theoretical speculation. These are the documented systems that impact our privacy, shape public discourse, and challenge democratic oversight in the digital age. For decades, a complex network of intelligence agencies, private contractors, and technology platforms has expanded its reach into our daily lives. Not through conspiracy, but through the steady growth of surveillance capabilities, data collection practices, and influence operations, many of which were initially created with legitimate security aims but have expanded far beyond their original scope. This isn't about shadowy cabals. It's about documented programs, confirmed through journalistic investigations, whistleblowers, declassified documents, and court cases. Programs that operate largely outside public view and with limited accountability, raising profound questions about privacy, democracy, and power in the digital age. In this video, I'll examine how modern surveillance and influence systems work, from confirmed mass data collection programs to algorithmic manipulation to media influence operations that have been verified through investigative reporting. The surveillance reality. It begins with data, the most valuable resource of our time. Your digital footprint is vast and growing daily. Your smartphone tracks your location constantly. Your browsing history creates a detailed profile of your interests, concerns, and habits. Your purchases, both online and with credit cards, paint a picture of your lifestyle. Your social media activity reveals your social networks, political leanings, and emotional states. This data collection isn't hidden, it's in the terms of service you accept. But the scale and scope of it remain largely invisible to most people. According to a 2019 Pew Research Center study, 81% of Americans feel they have little to no control over the data companies collect, yet they continue using these services because modern life demands it. The NSA's mass surveillance programs, revealed by Edward Snowden in 2013, confirmed what many suspected. Programs like PRISM granted direct access to user data from companies including Google, Facebook, and Apple. X-Keyscore allowed analysts to search through vast databases of emails, online chats, and browsing histories without prior authorization. Upstream collection tapped directly into the Internet's backbone, capturing data as it flowed through key infrastructure. These weren't rogue operations. They were legally authorized under contested interpretations of laws like Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and Executive Order 12333, though many legal scholars and courts have questioned their constitutionality. The 2015 USA Freedom Act modified some collection practices, but many core programs continue. In 2018, the NSA announced it had deleted 685 million call records, not because the collection was deemed improper, but due to technical irregularities, causing overcollection. The system itself remained intact. Private surveillance has expanded alongside government programs. Today, facial recognition systems scan crowds in major cities and retail establishments. Companies like Clearview AI have built databases of over 10 billion facial images scraped from social media. License plate readers track vehicle movements across the country. Smart speakers listen in our homes, with recordings sometimes reviewed by human contractors. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated surveillance normalization through contact tracing apps, QR code systems, and health passports. While created for public health purposes, these systems demonstrated how quickly mass surveillance infrastructure can be deployed and accepted. What makes modern surveillance particularly powerful isn't just its scope but its invisibility. There are no obvious signs you're being monitored. The cameras are smaller, the trackers are embedded in software, and the collection happens silently in the background of our digital lives. Data brokers and the private surveillance economy behind this surveillance ecosystem stands a largely unregulated industry of data brokers, companies that collect, analyze, and sell your personal information. Firms like Axiom, Oracle Data Cloud, and Epsilon maintain thousands of data points on hundreds of millions of individuals. A 2014 FTC report found that data brokers collect and store billions of data elements covering nearly every U.S. consumer. They analyze this data to create detailed profiles, including sensitive inferences about health conditions, financial vulnerability, and political beliefs, often with remarkable accuracy. The wall between private and government surveillance is thinner than most realize. Through programs like the Department of Homeland Security's Homeland Security Information Network and Fusion Centers, government agencies regularly purchase or access private sector data. This allows them to obtain information without the legal restrictions that would apply to direct government collection. In 2020, the Wall Street Journal revealed that government agencies were buying location data from commercial vendors to track immigrants and conduct other investigations, without warrants. Similarly, the IRS, FBI, and other agencies have purchased commercially available datasets to enhance their surveillance capabilities while bypassing Fourth Amendment restrictions. The military and intelligence community maintain close relationships with Silicon Valley. In Q Telephone, the CIA's venture capital firm, has invested in dozens of data analytics and surveillance technology companies. Pentagon programs like Project Maven enlisted tech giants to develop AI capabilities for drone footage analysis before employee protests forced some companies to withdraw. Algorithmic influence and behavioral modification, the control of information, has evolved beyond simple censorship. Today's most effective influence operations work through algorithmic curation, determining what content receives prominence and what remains effectively invisible. Social media platforms use complex algorithms to determine what content reaches users. These algorithms aren't neutral, they're designed to maximize engagement, which often means amplifying emotionally provocative content, including misinformation that triggers strong reactions. Internal documents released by Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen in 2021 revealed that the company's own research showed its algorithms promoted divisive content and that executives rejected changes that might reduce engagement, even when that engagement was harmful. As one internal document stated, "Our algorithms exploit the human brain's attraction to divisiveness. The attention economy creates powerful financial incentives to capture and direct human attention." As Tristan Harris, former Google design ethicist and co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology, explains, "If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Our attention is harvested and our behavior subtly shaped to serve business models dependent on advertising." Content moderation decisions on major platforms impact what billions of people see and don't see. These decisions combine automated systems with human reviewers, operating under policies that are often opaque and inconsistently applied. The result is a system of information control with limited oversight or accountability. While these systems weren't created as government tools, their effect on information access is profound. When platforms remove content or restrict accounts based on government requests, as Twitter revealed it did millions of times in transparency reports, the line between private action and state censorship blurs. Even when government agencies don't directly request removals, they apply pressure. Congressional hearings regularly feature lawmakers demanding more content removal from platform executives. Regulatory threats create incentives for platforms to proactively restrict content that might provoke government scrutiny. The most sophisticated influence operations don't need to remove content, they simply ensure you never see it. By adjusting recommendation algorithms, platforms can effectively make content disappear not through deletion but through obscurity. This, soft censorship, is far harder to detect or challenge than overt restrictions. Media systems and narrative management in traditional media still shapes public understanding of major events, but the landscape has changed dramatically. Media consolidation has concentrated ownership of most major outlets among a handful of corporations. According to a 2021 analysis, just 6 media conglomerates control 90% of what Americans read, watch, and listen to. This concentration creates opportunities for narrative management. Not through direct orders, but through alignment of corporate interests, dependence on official sources, and the economic pressures of the attention economy. The revolving door between media, government, and industry further blurs these boundaries. Former intelligence officials regularly appear as news analysts without clear disclosure of ongoing relationships with government contractors. Public relations firms staffed by former government officials shape media narratives for corporate and government clients. Operation Mockingbird, a CIA program that planted stories in American news outlets during the Cold War, was real and documented in the Church Committee investigations of the 1970s. While the specific program was officially discontinued, relationships between intelligence agencies and media outlets continue in more subtle forms. For example, Documents released by NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden revealed the existence of JTRIG, Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, a unit of the British GCHQ that conducted online influence operations. Their techniques included manipulating online discourse, artificially inflating certain content, and damaging targets' reputations through false information, all detailed in slides describing the art of deception. Similarly, the Pentagon's information operations budget has grown significantly, with programs designed to influence foreign audiences increasingly affecting domestic information spaces due to the global nature of online media. The Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012 modified restrictions on the domestic dissemination of government-produced news, allowing content created by the State Department and the Broadcasting Board of Governors, now the U.S. Agency for Global Media, to be released within the United States. Critics worried this would blur the lines between foreign propaganda and domestic information campaigns. The mechanisms of modern psychological influence tactics have evolved significantly beyond crude propaganda. Modern influence operations employ sophisticated techniques grounded in behavioral science. Fear remains a powerful motivator. Research in effective neuroscience shows that fear signals bypass rational thought processes, triggering immediate emotional and behavioral responses. This makes fear-based messaging particularly effective at motivating action without critical analysis. Repetition creates what psychologists call the illusory truth effect, the tendency to believe information after repeated exposure. Studies show that people rate statements they've heard before as more truthful than new statements, regardless of actual accuracy. This makes repeated messaging powerful even when factually questionable. Information overload serves strategic purposes. When people face overwhelming amounts of conflicting information, many abandon the effort to determine what's true. As RAND researchers described in their study of truth decay, this leads to the death of objective reality, where citizens retreat to tribal information sources that confirm existing beliefs. Social proof, our tendency to look to others for guidance on behavior, provides another leverage point. When we see others accepting certain ideas or restrictions, we're more likely to comply without resistance. This explains why controlling the perception of consensus on controversial issues is a priority for influence operations. Manufactured crises create opportunities to implement changes that would face resistance under normal circumstances. As political theorist Naomi Klein documented in The Shock Doctrine, moments of crisis often enable rapid implementation of pre-planned policies while citizens are too disoriented to effectively oppose them. These techniques aren't secret or mysterious. They're documented in academic research, military manuals on psychological operations, and marketing literature. Their effectiveness comes not from occult power but from a deep understanding of human psychology applied at scale through modern communication systems. Institutional capture and the challenge to democratic systems rely on independent institutions that check and balance power. When these institutions are captured by special interests, democracy weakens, even while maintaining its outward structures. Regulatory capture. When regulatory agencies advance the interests of the industries they supervise rather than the public good, has been documented across multiple sectors. The revolving door between government agencies and the industries they regulate creates conflicts of interest that undermine independent oversight. Education systems face similar pressures. Standardized testing regimes have narrowed curricula and reduced emphasis on critical thinking skills in favor of measurable outcomes. Corporate influence in education policy, documented by researchers like Diane Ravitch, shapes how future citizens learn to think about social and political questions. Science itself faces challenges to independence. Industry funding of research creates documented biases in published findings. A 2018 analysis in JAMA found that industry-sponsored studies were more likely to report favorable results than independently funded studies. The replication crisis in scientific research has further revealed how even peer-reviewed findings may be less reliable than previously believed. Media independence has declined with economic pressures. As traditional journalism business models collapsed, news outlets became more dependent on wealthy owners with their own interests and agendas. Cost-cutting has reduced investigative reporting capabilities while increasing reliance on prepackaged content from government and corporate sources. Even ostensibly independent fact-checking organizations receive funding from many of the same foundations and corporate sources that fund the media outlets they evaluate, raising questions about structural influences on what receives critical scrutiny and what doesn't. Conclusion. Reclaiming agency in the surveillance age. This analysis isn't about instilling paranoia. It's about understanding documented systems that affect our privacy, access to information, and democratic agency. Knowledge is the first step toward meaningful reform. Modern surveillance and influence systems weren't created by a single entity with a master plan. They evolved through the interaction of technological capability, security concerns, economic incentives, and institutional dynamics. Their power comes not from perfect coordination but from aligned interests and shared tools. Yet these systems aren't inevitable or unchangeable. Throughout history, excessive power has eventually faced democratic constraints. The Church Committee reforms of the 1970s placed limits on intelligence abuses. The antitrust movements of the early 20th century broke monopoly power. Civil liberties have expanded through persistent citizen action. Meaningful change begins with awareness. Understanding these systems, not through speculation but through documented evidence, allows citizens to recognize their influence and resist manipulation. Critical thinking skills, media literacy, and privacy protection measures provide individual defenses against influence operations. Structural reform requires democratic pressure. Privacy legislation, algorithmic transparency requirements, antitrust enforcement, campaign finance reform, and strengthened whistleblower protections can all help restore balance between security, commerce, and civil liberties. Most importantly, democratic renewal demands civic engagement. When citizens withdraw from public life, power concentrates in fewer hands. Participation in local governance, community organizations, and democratic processes creates resilience against centralized control. The challenges are significant but not insurmountable. History shows that informed, organized citizens can create meaningful change even against powerful interests. The future remains unwritten. The question isn't whether these surveillance and influence systems exist, the evidence confirms they do. The question is what kind of society we want to build in response to them. One where technology and power serve democratic values and human dignity. Or one where they undermine both. That choice belongs to all of us. And it begins with seeing clearly what exists, understanding how it works, and committing to the difficult but essential work of democratic renewal. Because in the end, the most dangerous system isn't one that watches us or influences us. It's one that convinces us we're powerless to change it. You aren't powerless. None of us are. But reclaiming our power starts with knowledge, not speculation, not fear, but a clear-eyed understanding of the documented realities that shape our world. That understanding begins now.